Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new series for Victoria 3. This time we will be delving deeper into more complex game mechanics such as elections, trade and naval warfare as we fight for the independence of our nation and then steer it towards a more progressive socialist society. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into a new Iron Man sandbox game. And I hope you guessed which island it is that we're going to build our socialist utopia on. It is already a tropical paradise. And we will develop it into the most progressive socialist state in the world. Now, Cuba, in 1836, Cuban relations with their Spanish overlords have become strained. Calls for the representation in the Spanish parliament and resistance to the abolition of slavery have met with hostility from Madrid. Is a Cuban revolution inevitable? I think it is. Let's do a quick overview before we unpause, but we'll try to unpause in the first half of this episode. So Cuba, at the start of the game, is an insignificant power, giving it 500 influence, 50 maneuvers per diplomatic play, but most importantly, plus 25% penalty to loan interest rate, which means we're going to have to avoid going into deficit at pretty much all costs and try to maintain healthy amount of gold reserves. We have +1 potential agitators that can arise in our nation. And we get minus 25% migration attraction. Again, a pretty strong penalty that we'll try to get rid of as soon as we possibly can. Otherwise, we have 5 battalions, so not much of an army. We have almost 900,000 GDP, 900,000, slightly over 900,000 population. 25% literacy, 8.2 average standard of living, so struggling. We are 100% Catholic, 924,000 out of 924,000 population. Our primary culture is Caribbeano, which is important to note is European heritage, and has Hispanophone trait. They're 100% Catholic, no obsessions, no taboos. They are the primary culture in Cuba. No turmoil or anything like that. In terms of diplomacy, important to note, we start off as a puppet of Spain, which also has another puppet of Philippines under its thumb. It is also owed obligations from Portugal, but otherwise, it is a major power, kind of towards the bottom end of major powers. It's got 71 battalions of an army. It only has 9 flotillas, which is good for us for now. It has almost 9 million GDP, so obviously 9 times our GDP. It's got 12 times our population at 12 million. Got roughly similar literacy, obviously Catholic Spanish. It is a monarchy governed by the Catholic Church and intelligentsia. And its strategies are expand resource industries. Spain wants to invest into the extraction of natural resources. It wants to promote liberal reforms, seeks to promote the power and reform agenda of the intellectuals and industrial magnates. Okay, and defend the borders. Spain wants to keep the world at bay through armed isolationism. So that is Spain. Now, the good thing about being their puppet is that we are automatically part of their market. And what does that mean? That means, first of all, we benefit from all the demand for various consumption goods, such as clothes, for example, or foodstuffs. It also means we gain access, intra-market towards, potentially more kind of iron or sort of goods required for, industrialization. We'll see which goods we have on our land, but maybe sulfur, lead, things like that. And if they do expand their colonial empire, we'll gain access to those resources as well. That is one good thing. The second good thing is that we can benefit from migration from Spain to Cuba, for example. I doubt it's going to happen from Philippines to Cuba. But from Spain to Cuba, they are of the same culture. You see, Spanish culture is one of European heritage and Hispanophone. So their pops will not be discriminated in Cuba. So as long as we can have a higher standard of living in Cuba than in Spain, if we can industrialize and build up our economy a bit faster than them, right? Although currently they're at average standard of living at 8.9, whereas we're at 8.2. But we really need to look at kind of deeper into detail for lower strata especially, right? It's because it's these guys that will mostly migrate. Important to check also, do they have migration controls? Yes, they do. So it's Migration controls only people of cultures and religions not discriminated against may migrate. That law is also enabled for us, as we'll see in a second, so we can benefit from migration from Spain to Cuba. Those are the benefits of being their puppet and therefore being part of their market, right? Benefiting economically and being able to attract migrants and therefore increase our own population, which will ultimately be a block on how big we can grow our economy. If we run out of labor, there's not much industrialization we'll be able to do. Now, the downside of being a puppet, which I'm not sure is actually explained in puppet. Yeah, this could really use a tooltip. But the downside of this is that, first of all, they gain 75% of our convoys. Now, actually, before we go on, let's just go over. There are 6 types of subjects in the game quickly. 3 I'd put aside for now because they can relate to unrecognized powers such as vassals. But 3 are really the important ones for sort of if you're playing a more or less developed nation. And those are the protectorate. So when we played Serbia, for example, they're a protector of the Ottoman Empire. That leaves you in completely autonomous. I think you do have to give up 50% of your convoys, which wasn't an issue for us because Serbia obviously doesn't need any convoys, nor was it really producing any. Otherwise, it owes nothing to its overlord. For example, in the case of Serbia, the Ottoman Empire, it does not contribute anything from its treasury, so no tributes are paid, and nothing else. It's also fully autonomous in terms of its foreign policy, so it can actually itself switch to another market, have alliances, and we saw all of that as Serbia. So there, being a protectorate it is also as a protectorate. I don't think you're dragged into automatically into the diplomatic plays or wars of the Ottoman Empire. So that is protectorate. That is the highest level of autonomy. Now, 1 level down is dominion, and 2 levels down is the puppet. So that's kind of 3 out of 3, the bottom level of being a subject. It is the most restrictive. What are those restrictions? So first of all, as I already mentioned, we do contribute 75% of our convoys to Spain, right? So we're a puppet. Recognized powers may turn a weaker country into their puppet. A puppet is subject type that cannot start their own diplomatic plays, so we cannot form an alliance. We can't gain land. We can't start our diplomatic plays, right? Yet are forced to join their overlords' wars. So whatever war Spain gets itself into, we're going to need to join that, and must also pay 30% of their treasury income to their overlord each week. 30%, guys, right? A puppet's rank cannot increase to match or exceed their overlords. That's okay for us for now. And their overlord may target them with the annexation diplomatic play. So the worst things for us really is that we need to pay 30% of our treasury income to our overlord each week. If we were to increase our autonomy to 1 level up from puppet to a dominion, this would decrease to 25%. Still pretty punishing. And if we then increase our autonomy again to a protectorate, which would be ideal for us almost, then all of these penalties pretty much go away. We'd pay nothing to their treasury. We'd only contribute 50% of the convoys, which we can live with, although obviously not ideal. So we will aim for full independence, but we will try to maintain a customs union with Spain at the same time. That is actually beneficial for us because we will attract those pops that we don't discriminate against. So that is our overarching, therefore kind of determines, just from this basic explanation of what Cuba is, our first kind of geopolitical goal of this playthrough, and that will probably take us about 50 years, is to gain independence from Spain, or at least increase our autonomy, thereby reducing the number of convoys we contribute and reducing the amount of tribute we effectively pay to our overlord. Now, in the meantime, as I already said, there are a few benefits to us, is that our economy will be a bit stronger and we'll be able to attract some of the population from Spain to us. Now, if we look at, obviously, geopolitically, we are on opposite sides of the Atlantic. That means, were we to start any plays to increase our autonomy against Spain, they would have to come here and attack us, right? In order to attack us, they will need a fleet, they will need to sail, and they will need to succeed in a naval invasion against Cuba. Therefore, as an island, we need a strong navy to compete with Spain and try to stop their naval invasion. And we can, as long as we have a fleet in the same node from which they're trying to launch a naval invasion. Naval invasion cannot proceed unless they have destroyed our fleet or made it retreat somehow. So We will build up a navy, so that is our first geopolitical kind of economic goal. Build up our budgetary surplus in order to be able to afford a large navy that will be able to compete with Spain. And when we make a play for more autonomy or independence even, then we will defeat Spain by not even letting them land the troops there, for negating their entire strengthened army, which probably we really can't match, right? An alternative strategy would be to build up a huge army and just turtle up and gain that advantage, for example, gain trench infantry and shrapnel artillery and just turtle up on our island and make them unable to invade, since they already going to have a big penalty from naval invasions. However, they have much more manpower, so they'll be able to replace soldiers, whereas we won't be. And also, they'll be able to build likely a much larger army, and they'll just keep sending troops as long as they have control of the sea. Therefore, it is better for us probably to just forget about our army. We don't really need it either. Definitely not while we're their puppet. Instead, focus on our navy and try to intercept their fleet and defeat them at sea and stop any naval invasion and gain our independence that way. So that will be that. That's about it effectively for our diplomatic situation. As we saw, also we can't start any diplomatic play, so that makes our life pretty easy. Now, in terms of our state, so we are a single state sort of nation, just like Serbia when we did that playthrough. What do we have in here? Let's have a look. So we're GDP, obviously 100% of GDP of our population lives here, struggling average standard of living, 100% access to Spanish market because we're within our infrastructure cap. It is a capital state. Obviously, there is a slave state. Building Cuba either utilize slaves or have the potential to utilize them. We're homeless to the Caribbean culture, our culture. We got plenty of taxation capacity, so only using 92. So we got another taxation capacity for another 900,000 people or so, since every 10,000 pops requires one taxation capacity. We are doing okay on infrastructure, but this is something we need to be mindful of. We only have 42, mostly from kind of base state, from 2 ports. I'm guessing giving us 5 each. We're a coastal state, so we get 2 base there, and some from POPs and urbanization, urban planning technologies. We do have some discoverable resources, so let's bear that in mind. So perhaps it's worth researching some of the techs like dynamite that increase resource discovery chance, and we'll see what we discover. Homeland, in other words, we do have one kind of special bonus of natural harbors, giving us +10 naval base max level, +2 port max level, which will help us with our infrastructure. Naval base will help us building a larger navy. +10% shipyards building throughput, and +10% military shipyards building throughput, both helping us with our merchant fleet and our military fleet. So we will be focusing a lot on the naval game in this playthrough as Cuba. Now, in terms of our buildings, let's go have a look. We only have 1 urban center, no manufacturing whatsoever. In terms of our resources, we have nothing developed. We do have good potential for 18-sized iron mines, 16-sized coal mines, so very good. That's the core of of healthy industrial economy is there. We have potential for 15 logging camps, again, excellent. Plenty of logging camp wood, I guess, for construction and for furniture manufactories and some such. I mean, lots of things need wood and hardwood. Arms industries, artillery, all of that. Missing sulfur and lead, which again, lead especially makes our army weaker, especially if once we get to skirmish infantry. However, getting to something like ironclads and monitors, so more advanced naval ships, will require munitions as well. So we need to be mindful, and we kind of need to win independence earlier rather than later. We do have potential for 10 fishing wharves. Neither here nor there. Many countries have it. It's just fish, basically, more food. In terms of our agriculture, we have lots of arable land. Clearly kind of 82, I guess 92 plus 10, 102, 105 arable land, so plenty. We have potential for 92 sugar plantations, 87 rice farms, 87 tobacco plantations, 85 coffee. We got bananas, livestock farms. So this is meat and fabric. So excellent, maybe even some fertilizer. So great potential for this sort of basic goods like tobacco, coffee. Good for our armies, good for export, so good for, we can build quite a bit of trade, and we'll see that. We'll get into trade straight away. Rice farms can provide us with our own grains. Again, good, because when we do make a play for independence, we're going to, at least temporarily, if not forever, cut our ties with the Spanish market, right? And so we'll need to make sure we have enough food in our own nation. Sugar, also good export good, can be made into liquor, which is another good export good, so excellent. So, quite strong, good agricultural start as well. In terms of our development, we just have the 5 barracks serving our 5 battalions, and we have 2 ports giving us 300 convoys, of which, again, 75% of these, 225 of these convoys, we give away to Spain, and we only keep 75 for our own trade. Again, another impetus for independence, given that we need to, or at least increasing our autonomy and reducing the number of convoys we forfeit to our overlord or contribute to our overlord, because we need those ourselves for our own trade. So there we are. Now, while we're here, I guess pretty simple start, right? We're not sure. We will industrialize. We are in a slight budgetary surplus, so we would want to build a construction sector. However, it will use 75 wood and 25 fabric, probably putting strain on our wood demand. So let's go ahead and open up with a logging camp just to increase supply of wood in our market, and then follow up with a construction sector, and then we'll see where we get to once the economy, or once we unpause the game and the economy settles a little bit. We'll see what migration kind of works on. Once again, the game unpauses. Now, while we're here also, let's go ahead and actually utilize more. I didn't do this in my previous playthroughs, but now I've learned to do it. Actually, a lot of things can be right-clicked in Victoria 3, and a lot of kind of clicks can be sped up. So decrease can either be passed through the political lens, decrease, or even it's much easier, just right-click, and we'll pass road maintenance, given we have plenty of authority, 700. It is nice to have the excess for minus 25% enactment time. I don't think we'll be passing a lot of laws very soon, so we might as well use up our authority on some useful decrees. For example, issue road maintenance in Cuba, plus 10% state construction efficiency, given we start with a base of 10, as all countries do. We gain plus 1, and the basic construction sector using wooden buildings gives us 2 construction. So this is effectively half a construction sector straight away, right? In addition, we're going to get 1 infrastructure per 100,000 people, so 9 infrastructure, given we have 924,000 of population here. Straight away, again, as we saw, we are doing okay in infrastructure, but more, we will build up quite quickly, and so this is very useful for us. Again, 75 authority, perfect. We get 75 because our leader is cruel, giving us minus 25% bonus, or sort of a cut to authority required. Now, another thing, we should pass the greener grass campaign, as I just mentioned, giving us 50% migration attraction, right? Promote the state as a desirable place to migrate to. Again, attract some of those Spanish pops that we do not discriminate against, therefore, they can actually work in all the buildings and contribute politically, etc., and become loyal members of our regime. Road maintenance is expand and maintain road networks. Now, anything else, I would also go for encourage resource industry, 20% mines throughput. So when we start building our iron and coal mines, logging, 20% logging throughput. Again, wood is very often in high demand at the start of the game, primarily because there's a lot of industries that use wood, plus the construction sector, wooden buildings, again, as we saw, is each sector adds 75, demands 75 of wood. So let's go ahead and encourage resource industry. We could also promote national values. We're already 100% Catholic. Assimilation, foreign popes whose culture is accepted in the country they live in and who do not live in one of their homelands, may assimilate into one of the countries. So we can assimilate the Spaniards we have. I think, let's go ahead and do it. Because the 2% of the Spanish population that we have, we can go ahead and assimilate them. Let's go ahead and have a look at our population just quickly. So 924,000 that we saw, our pop growth is atrocious. we will need to get that up again as a matter of kind of domestic priority. Let's have a look quickly. So one thing we didn't note is how is our labor force doing? Now we do have 72,000 unemployed, and that is another reason to start with simple buildings like logging camps that only take 200 construction, followed up by maybe even 2 construction sectors, since these only take 100 construction. We are in a healthy surplus. We will see how this all kind of shakes out when we actually unpause the game, but we should be okay. So we need to create jobs urgently. So this will create 15,000 jobs within the first kind of few months. So our labor, we do have spare labor available, however, not a lot of it, right? And obviously 900,000 is not a big population. I won't go into the distinction between workforce and dependence, as I've gone through that in previous playthroughs. We will touch upon it as we go through this playthrough, but I won't do it when we open up, right? But effectively, if at about 25% workforce ratio, so we only have 250,000 workers. Most of these are employed. Okay, we do have some labor pool here. Therefore, increasing population growth is a priority, because that will be the cap, for our GDP, therefore our budget, therefore the size of our navy, therefore the question of our independence, right? And that is a priority for us. Now, let's have a look at charts. So we're 30% slaves, 30% peasants, 20% laborers, and 9% farmers, and that is your 90%, right? 60, 80. That's 90% of our population right there. 80% are slaves, peasants, or laborers, so lower strata. In terms of political strength, however, farmers hold 30% of political strength, 31% almost. Aristocrats hold 28%, despite only being 1.6% of the population. And then we have clergy with 27%. So that's pretty much 90%, 85% of our political strength is held by farmers, aristocrats, and clergymen. We'll see why that is. But that's something to note right now. Don't have any capitalists at all as well, you will note, as we simply don't have any. Well, as we saw, we don't have any manufacturing or even resources, right? Primarily, we are wholly agricultural economy here, exporting these basic kind of, exotic Western goods like sugar and tobacco and coffee. Let's go back to our population quickly, and here we are. So Caribeno is 50% of our population, Afro-Caribeno is 47.7%, and Spanish population is 2.38%. Now, if you look at Afro-Caribeno, so they are the ones who are Hispanophone, just like us. However, they are of African heritage rather than European heritage, and that is why we're discriminating against them. Now, they don't live in their homelands, right? They don't live in their homelands. I don't think Caribeno. They don't live in their home. Therefore, actually, assimilation is a good decree. It's actually, I think they should be assimilating. Let's keep track of this, actually. But they should be assimilating into Caribeno pops. As should this... Well, no, actually, sorry, pardon me. They will not be assimilating anywhere, because assimilation only works on foreign pops whose culture is accepted in the country they live in, and who do not live in one of their homelands may assimilate into one of the country's primary cultures. Pops that contain radicals will assimilate at a reduced rate, and assimilation is much slower in unincorporated states. Obviously, we're a single state incorporated, so no, actually, Afro-Caribenos will not assimilate, but the Spaniards, these 22,000, and maybe more that will migrate from Spain to us, will assimilate into just Caribeno. We are 100% Catholic, so that's about it. That's all for our population. So we've set up our decrees for our single state, as well as opened up with a kind of starting queue of buildings, logging camps, plus 2 construction sectors, aiming to bring the unemployment down and just kickstart our economy. That's it. Last thing to look at just before we unpause, let's go have a look at our politics and look at our laws first, just to get a kind of an overview of what is our nation looking like in 1836. So we are a presidential republic, right? A political system where power is held by the people and their elected representatives. Republics have an elected or nominated president as head of state. 100 authority, 10 legitimacy based on votes, 10 legitimacy from including the head of state in government, 20% government ideology penalty. We have landed voting. This is very important, right? So we do have a voting system, right? But only those who own land or capital property are given a vote. How does that reflected in the game? Well, we do have 100 authorities gives us 100 legitimacy based on government clout. So we do need to have interest groups belonging to a party of considerable government clout in government to for it to be a legitimate government, to gain legitimacy or be recognized as a legitimate government. We do get 40 legitimacy based on votes, so it's still mostly based on clout, but we get 40 from votes. And we get 1+1 government size allowance, which means we can have 2 parties in government, as opposed to just one under autocracy, for example. Or the base is 1, and autocracy give a bonus, so that gets left with 1. We get plus 20% government ideology penalty, and then we have 50 political strength from the votes of aristocrats, 25 political strength from capitalists, political strength from votes of clergymen, 25 political strength from officers. This basically means that the only people who actually vote in our elections are aristocrats, capitalists, clergymen, and officers, because it is only their vote. I mean, other people may vote, except it doesn't really matter, but each interest group, and in fact, we'll talk about this in a bit more detail, but interest groups are the ones who benefit from clout, but then they have to organize themselves into parties that pops can vote for. So popes can't vote for interest groups, they can only vote for parties. And then those parties, they can vote for, whoever they want, but the votes that count are only ones from aristocrats, capitalists, clergymen, and officers, who are very likely to support, obviously, parties representing landowners and the Catholic Church, for example. So aristocrats gain 50 political strength per vote. Capitalists, clergymen, and officers gain 25 political strength from votes. Otherwise, we are national supremacy. Foreign cultures are discriminated against unless they share both heritage and language or other customs, right? So as we saw, this is why, despite being Hispanophone, the Afro-Caribbean people are discriminated against. It is because they do not share a heritage trait. They are of African heritage and we are of European heritage. The Caribbean culture, our primary culture, that is. It does give us 150 authority. It gives us less radicals, more loyalists. Now, our state religion is, we do have a state religion, that's Catholicism, that gives 30% power to Catholic Church, 200 authority. Again, less radicals, more loyalists. From standard of living decreases and increases. So that's good. The church is an official organ of the state. All minority religions are discriminated against. We're 100% Catholic, so it doesn't really matter all that much. It does give 30% power, political strength to Catholic Church, however. Now, bureaucracy. We have appointed bureaucrats. Bureaucrats are appointed by rulers to serve the country's best interest in exchange for high wages. It gives us 25% taxation capacity, which is actually a good thing. 25% political strength of bureaucrats, important to note. These guys typically support intelligentsia, which would be good for us, I think. But 25% taxation capacity is good. We have a professional army. The army consists of well-trained professional regulars. We'll see what we do with this. I mean, it's not really enough to defend ourselves against our overlord. Not enough, which is really the only use for our army, other than fighting in our overlord's wars, which we'll be dragged into. We could get invaded by someone else. I doubt we're going to, transport our troops and help our overlord. I don't really see a reason to. I think with the 30% tribute that we pay to them and 75% of our convoys, I think they should be able to handle their wars by themselves. But war anyone else as part of our war on the side of our overlord or our overlord itself to come to us, our professional army isn't really going to be able to help. But it does give 25% political strength to the armed forces, however, also important to note. So that, while we track the kind of disposition of political forces in our nation. We have no internal security. The state makes no special attempts to put a stop to unrest and uprisings. And that's it for our power structure. Mainly, we're a presidential republic. We have landed voting. This is very important. Right? And we're going to need to think about how we deal with it. Right now, we do have elections. However, only the votes of aristocrats, capitalists, clergymen, and officers count. And aristocrats and capitalists especially, they tend to vote for industrialists and landowners respectively. Right? It's a very kind of monodirectional voting. So not much we can get elected from this. certainly can't progress to a social democrat type society from this. In terms of our economy, let's keep looking. So economic system, we have interventionism. To ensure the stability of our nation, government must curb the worst excesses of private businesses. 50% private construction allocation, and we can subsidize all buildings. Pretty simple, I think good enough to start with. Trade policy is mercantilism, an export-focused economy with an emphasis on keeping a positive current account and competing with other nations. Okay, so we can kind of change priority of different goods. Again, we'll see that when we set up trade. Mercantilism, taxation, we're at per capita taxation, a tax system that disproportionately taxes the poor through a combination of income and per capita taxes. Again, good that we have a surplus. We will need all the money we can muster, all the financial firepower we can muster, to build up a navy to rival Spain and gain our independence. So there we are. Good enough. Actually, very good to start with. In terms of land reform, we have tenant farmers. Agricultural land is owned by hereditary elites. Workers are not tied to the land and may seek alternative employment if they can find it. Right? But nevertheless, that gives 25% power to the landowners interest group. Colonization, we have no colonial affairs. The country does not engage in any formal type of colonization and cannot establish new colonies. Well, we can't even do, I guess, even though we have an overlord, we could in theory establish colonies, I think, but we don't need to and we don't intend to. Policing, we have no police. Any sort of structured police force does not exist in this country. Now, education system-wise, we have religious schools. Letting the church take care of state education ensures a loyal and morally healthy population. Giving 10% political strength through the Catholic Church, 10% education access to everybody, 20% conversion. I mean, we are 100% Catholic anyway, so conversion doesn't really matter for us, but some education access and a little bit of power to the Catholic Church. And we are at level 1. We have no health system. The government does not fund any system of healthcare. This is interesting. We do have one available, however. Now let's see. We have charity hospitals available for us to enact. Charitable organizations, often religious ones, provide some help to anyone who is sick or dying to the degree they're able to. Now, this is a good one. Now, as I already mentioned, one of our top priorities at the start of the game is to maximize our population growth, to kind of raise that cap on how large our economy can become. So this would reduce mortality by 0.3%. Actually, I know it says 3, which is actually 0.3%. It would improve the standard of living for the lower strata, again, lowering their mortality as they become richer, also lowering their birth rate, but the differential will increase, right, after standard of living of 5, as I've explained in the prior to Let's Learn series. I will go over this again later, even like the nitty-gritty mechanics, but I don't want to do it now so that we can actually unpause. So this will, again, increase standard of living, give us more loyalists. It will, although to be honest, it doesn't really matter that it's going to give us more loyalists all that much. I guess it will give us support from the rural folk interest group and activate their traits. So that's a good thing. Yeah. So this will give us some benefit. And most importantly, it will raise the population growth rate for our lower stratas. Mortality will further lower mortality and obviously again further increase that differential. Minus 10% pollution effects. That's good as we start to build up industry. I mean, it will kick in more in the long run rather than immediately. It will have a give 10% political strength to the Catholic Church. So this is a good option, right? It's a good option. It will immediately let us, increase our population growth rate right off the bat. Also, raising standard of living is also a key determinant in migration. We'll talk about migration in just a little bit when we unpause. But if this raises standard of living for the lower strata, given it's probably the lower strata that are most likely to migrate, it will attract more migrants, again, further boosting our population growth, kind of overall, except this time from migration. It's a good one. However, what other options do we have? Now, no one really supports private health insurance right now because it's only industrialists who are now marginalized because we basically have no capitalists, and it's probably just some shopkeepers supporting this, a tiny few. Right, most people just don't care. Now we do have actually great support for 29%, actually same as charity hospitals. Now why is this? This is because trade unions who have 0% political clout, to be honest, are completely marginalized and really non-existent in our nation, support it, but that's just good to know. But what is important, the Catholic Church actually endorses public health insurance as well, and they have 29% of clout, so 29% of success to enact public health insurance. Now, what does public health insurance give us? Now, first of all, important to note that it requires one of the following. It requires pharmaceuticals to be researched, right? That will take us 7 years, give us +1 max health system institution investment, right? So we'll be able to upgrade charity hospitals to level 2, giving us 0.6% mortality reduction and 1 standard of living for the lower strata. Public health insurance, on the other hand, will give us +2 max health system institution investment by just getting this law. Plus, we'll get 1 level from pharmaceuticals. So I guess overall we'll be able to get to level 3 straight away, right? Or is it? No, I think if we enact this, it will be 1 level already, but this will give us +2 plus pharmaceuticals. So we might be able to get this to level 4 straight away, right? Straight away once we get, if we unlock pharmaceuticals and then pass this law and adopt public health insurance. Now, what would it give us? Public health insurance would provide health system level 1 with half a standard of living for everybody. That is excellent, right? That means at level 4, at level 2, it will be +1 for everyone as opposed to just the lower strata, as is the case for charity hospitals. It will give -15% pollution effects reduction, excellent, as opposed to -10% for charity hospitals. And it will give -4% mortality per level, as opposed to 3%. So excellent again. The government provides a publicly funded health insurance program ensuring equal access to care for all. So this is much better than charity hospitals. It also won't give the 10% political strength to Catholic Church, right? Making us easier for us to move our society towards a social democratic or communist, even progressive society later on. Now, the important thing to note, right, how laws are passed, is actually something I haven't mentioned. I guess it kind of slipped my mind in previous Let's Learns. But what is important to mention is why is this the case, and how do we decide which one to get? Now, obviously, public health insurance is better as long as we just need to research pharmaceuticals. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and just start researching it. That will sort out our research question, because we will need pharmaceuticals for either of these. We could go with charity hospitals, then get pharmaceuticals and quickly get this to level 2, again reducing mortality, upping standard of living. Or we could wait until pharmaceuticals gets researched. It will take 7 years. That is quite a long time to wait. 7% of the game, right? Given the game lasts for 100 years. But then we'll get public health insurance. Now, look at our government quickly and just look at the Catholic Church. If we look at their ideologies, right, which determines which laws they generally support or oppose, you can see here they're pious. This group believes religious principles are paramount moral truths and that they should permeate all of society. As part of that, their stance on the health system is that they oppose no health system, which we currently have, and private health insurance they don't like. They're neutral towards public health insurance and they endorse charity hospitals. Now, given we have no health system, they will lend their support and their clout to everything that is more preferable or relatively more preferable than something they oppose. Same is the case for neutral versus endorse and strongly endorse. Same is true is for endorse versus strongly endorse, right? However, were we to pass charity hospitals right now, right, which is something that the Catholic Church endorses, right, with their pious ideology, we would not gain their clout, their support, their political clout for passing public health insurance. It would say 0, right? We will not be able to even attempt, right? Because they will not lend their clout to passing a law that would move them to a neutral preference, right? So then if we miss this chance now, then the only way to get this would be much, much later, where we get trade unions, get them to a respectable political clout, get them into government, and then pass public health insurance. Thus, given we currently have a choice, go to charity hospitals, right? Or probably pass that, get to pharmaceuticals, and effectively we'll have this should pass pretty quickly since we have minus 25% enactment time from authority, maybe other bonuses, and we have a lot of support, no opposition. This would pass within say 1 year at most, right? Then we'll have 6 years until we reach pharmaceuticals, 6 years of having minus 0.3% mortality growth and half a standard of living increase. And then we'd increase this to level 2 with the pharmaceuticals, giving us +1 standard of living for the lowest strata, minus 0.6 mortality for the next probably 50 years or so, right? Because it's not going to be for 50 years, if not more, until we get trade unions powerful enough to actually be able to pass public insurance, health insurance. Thus, I would say this is probably a better trade-off to just pass nothing, keep Catholic Church a little bit unhappy, and keep them keen to pass something, right? But that something, we want it to be public health insurance rather than charity hospitals. So we'll wait 7 years and live with no health system. But once we get pharmaceuticals, we get public health insurance, and we'll get level 4, I believe, institution that will give us minus 1.2% mortality, 60% pollution effect reduction, and 2 standard of living for everybody. So I would go ahead and wait for this one. So that's what we're going to do. We're not going to pass any laws in the health system. That completes our overview of the economy. Laws, let's go ahead to human rights, and here it's pretty simple right now. Free speech, censorship. There is active censorship of the press and no guaranteed rights of assembly, again giving us more authority, of which we have plenty, and give us minus 40% suppression impact and interest group attraction, plus 40% bolstered. It does give us a penalty to technology spread, which is not great, but at least we should, in theory, be able to steer political clout between interest groups better. Labor rights, we have no workers' rights. Workers have no particular labor rights guaranteed by the state. Children's rights are child labor allowed. No legal restrictions are placed on where children may work. That gives 30% to dependents' income, making especially the lower strata better off. Well, in fact, middle strata as well, since their children work. It's only aristocrats and I think capitalist children that don't work. It does, however, raise mortality for farmers, laborers, machinists, and peasants. So for the lower, and the farmers are actually middle strata. For these dangerous jobs, where if your parents work in a different dangerous job, they probably bring their kids along. More people die then in these jobs specifically, which is the bulk of our population, right? If we look at by profession, I'm sure laborers, we already saw 30% of our population. Peasants, I think, at 10. Farmers also quite a lot. Machinists will become larger and larger as we industrialize. And 5% to mortality, that's effectively 0.5% increase in mortality, so 0.5 decrease in their population growth differential between, which is basically a differential. Population growth is the differential between birth rate and mortality. So this reduces our population growth. Again, something that we might want to deal with. However, 30% dependence income is very nice for our pops. That does increase their standard of living, which does affect migration. And migration attraction from other states. Right? Now, rights of women, legal guardianship. Women are legally under the guardianship of men and enjoy very few rights, plus 5% birth rate, which is good for us to grow population. Alternatives are, at the very least, propertied women, which will give us more workforce ratio. So just one-off increase in workers. We'll talk about how that works as well. In terms of welfare, we have no social security. It is not the state's role to provide for those who cannot provide for themselves. Migration controls. Only people of cultures and religions not discriminated against may migrate. That works for us. So currently, discriminated pops cannot migrate either away from us, which is more important, really, right? Because if there were, Spain liberalized, for example, our discriminated pops would quickly migrate over there. So we want to keep those kind of in place as our workforce. And we want to be able to attract pops we do not discriminate against from Spain, hopefully. And slavery. We still have slave trade in 1836. Demand for cheap labor is fulfilled through a dehumanizing trade in foreign bodies. I will explain how slaves work, since I don't think we've had those in Portugal or even Serbia. But important thing to note for now, politically, slave trade gives 50% strength for landowners, right? That's pretty big, right? We'll talk about how slavery works in terms of economics. But for now, that is something probably also we want to target as one of the kind of priorities in the early mid-game. get rid of the 50% strength for political landowners if we can, generally free the slaves and kind of move towards a sensible society. So there we are. Those are the kind of our laws. We're not going to pass a health system for the reasons I've explained. Institutions, we obviously, as we saw, we only have one enabled, that's education, and that is religious schools. So we've talked about Cuba, diplomacy, our geopolitical aim of building up the navy. We've talked about just the one state, what we have. We built up a construction queue. We talked about laws, and that in turn determined where we'll direct our initial research. Now, the only thing left is trade, right? Something, again, we kind of didn't go into too much detail with Portugal or Serbia. Serbia, I think we only went into as far as imports, but here we do have good potential for exports. Now, how does trade work, right? First of all, how do you even determine what you want to trade? Let's go, if you look at the market, whatever market you're part of, go to highlights. You do have this sort of monthly price report that shows us kind of how prices have changed in our market. I can even pin it to our outliner here. Although maybe not necessary. It does, however, at the bottom here show goods with considerable import demand. Okay, we'll deal with that in a bit, but goods with considerable potential for export are sugar, hardwood, which we're not producing given we don't even have a single logging camp, meat, man o' wars, this is military shipyard, producing military shipyards, coffee, and wine, right? So we do have a lot of sugar, right? So let's go ahead, go trade lens, export trade routes. That's to me, that is the best way to kind of see what we can actually export. Let's go have a look at sugar. Now, if we click here, we will see, let's select a market to export sugar to with 75 convoys available. Now, trade routes generally cost bureaucracy. However, the first 5 trade routes for any nation are free. All right, so 5 we can make free, and we will try, given we don't have a lot of bureaucracy, and the way to get bureaucracy is to build up government administration, which will put strain on our budget, which will leave less money for our navy, and therefore delay our independence. So we want to be conservative, and very kind of sparing with our bureaucracy. So let's try not to spend any on trade, maybe just one extra trade route here. We'll see. But for now, the purpose of trade routes, so if we get 5, which ones do we want? We want the ones that are productive. You saw me sort this by productivity. How is productivity kind of calculated? It's really the differential between kind of the price of the price in our market versus the price in the market that we are selling into. So for example, here predicted price, the French market will be the most productive at 20. Why? That is because predicted price on sugar in the French market. Well, in fact, you can even look here and then up to here, right? So you'll see predicted trade revenue after tariffs, 481, right? Or 20 per employee annually. Now, every trade route will create a trade center, which we'll have a look at, which will employ shopkeepers to administer that trade route, right? And they will make money on each trade route based on the differential, obviously, and kind of intuitively between prices at which the traders, right, buy it in our local market cheaply and sell it in the French market at a high price, right? Now, trade route level will be 4. That determines how many people they employ. The trade census, that is, right? That is determined by just the amount that is needed in France and the amount that we can export until the price is brought down to such a level that it is no longer profitable to increase the level of the trade route. So units of sugar trade will be 52. Trade revenue will be 717. Why is that? Trade revenue is calculated by taking the market price of 26.1 in the importing market, that is France, subtracting the market price of 12.4 in the exporting market, and then multiplying by the number of units, right? So 52, right, 13.6 is the differential times trade revenue. In terms of these numbers, I don't think they ever really tie up. For example, if you look here, right, the predicted price impact on sugar in French market will go from 28 to 22, and for the Spanish market, it will go up from 7.6 to 11.5, right? That's because we now have more demand internally, and in France, there's more supply now from this one trade route between 2 kind of national markets, right? This is what trade links are, effectively kind of an international way to link domestic markets. So intuitively, this never tie because trade is constantly shifting, like the prices are constantly adjusting. So I, to be honest, don't pay attention that much. What is important is you want to sell goods, you want to export goods that you make cheaply, and you want to import goods that are very expensive in your market, right? Otherwise, and so it's only those extreme differentials that lend themselves well to trade. So here we are, for example, right? So let's go ahead and give ourselves kind of French, British markets. That's 2 trade routes we just created, right? That requires 0 convoys. Why is that? That's probably because we're kind of exporting through Spain, so we don't need convoys to send things to Spain. Yeah, I guess France would then export to France via land, I would assume. And Britain. Interesting why we don't require... Why do we not require convoys to Britain? Not sure if the channel has anything to do with it. We'll actually explore that later and understand why, but it is a good thing. So that's 2 trade routes here. There's another one maybe with Austrian market potential, but let's have a look at other goods. And the way I typically do it is I just go through every good, right? Let's see, coffee, for example. There's a productive trade route there, level 5. 50. It will require 40 of our 75 convoys, though, for the Ottoman market potential. Yeah, that would be a good single trade route. Let's go fish. Yeah, some potential for fish. Could take up 2. Furniture, not really. So these, wherever the amount is low, even if the productivity is positive, because the price differential is so big, because you only produce like a small amount, you don't really want to waste a trade route on it, right? Because whether it's your a trade route can be of different levels. So it is the amount you export that determines the level, but the level doesn't have an effect on the bureaucracy cost of a trade route, right? Now grain, groceries, which is why you want to find things like a hardwood, iron, go liquor. So here we go. Right, so we produce this very cheaply, probably because we have very cheap sugar in our market. Now, we're not only producing any liquor in Cuba, but in Spain we are. Probably because they're using our cheap sugar. Now, let's have a look. All of these, this is the paper market, Sicily, Sweden. All of these are good, right? I guess. But they do require convoys. This one requires 25, for example. Some potential for liquor, so clothes, no. Man of wars, not really. Meat, 30 convoys for only 18. Anyway, the number of convoys also is determined by how far. So, for example, when you go to Qing market, to China, right, then we need 30 because they're so far away, even for the same amount, right? Whereas we go to liquor, then it's 18, but it's to paper market, which is obviously in Italy, we only need 14. Now, paper, not really. Silk, none of this. Sugar, okay, sugar we've looked through. Tobacco, not really. Okay, wine, yes, potentially. So what do we have? 10. Yeah, but kind of small amount. 7 really for 22. That's kind of a good one. Good mix of productivity. Again, amount, size. That means we will employ a lot of people in our market. If the amount is big, level will be big. Of the trade route, right? That means we're kind of getting more bang for our buck, employing more people in our market that will work a profitable job, given the productivity is positive. That means it's positive revenue per employee, right? That will keeping our kind of standard of living here happy, employing, creating more shopkeepers who will obviously politically support petite bourgeoisie and intelligentsia and others, and so on. So now we use 2 trades. We still have 3, right? So I think we saw there was 1 for citrus. Actually, there's 2 for citrus we could use, 1 for coffee. So this is a really good one. This will use 40 of our convoys. Let's go ahead and add that. So that will be, so we have 30 convoys left. So what do we have? 12 for 33. So this could be our 4th trade route. And we could go for liquor. We could go with this one, maybe just, okay, we'll lose some convoys to that. But hopefully we'll make that up soon. This is 11 using 25 coins. So there we go. Let's establish these 5 trade routes, and we'll see that immediately we get a trade center of level 10 because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trade routes, all positive. We'll see how this actually builds up. Right now, workforce obviously is 0, but they will hire shopkeepers very quickly. So 5 minutes left of the episode, guys. That's still pretty good. First time. The first 2 Let's Plays Let's Learn series for Serbia and Portugal. We didn't unpause until I think the end of the second episode. But here, actually, one thing left. Let's go look at our diplomacy. Again, we can't start diplomatic plays, but we do have influence. So let's go ahead and just start improving relations with United States and Great Britain. And we'll improve relations with everyone we can, looking for allies against Spain potentially down the line when we make a play for our independence. So let's go ahead and with that unpause at a slow speed. So I'm just thinking, so we're researching pharmaceuticals to gain access to the public health system. We'll pass that law when we get there. Otherwise, sorry, let's actually look at our government quickly in the last 5 minutes. Sorry. And see if we want to use the bit of our authority to bolster anyone. Now, we do have a conservative party in charge, which has basically united the interests of landowners, Catholic Church, and armed forces. Unsurprisingly, it has 100% of the votes. Now, why is that? Again, it's very important to understand the landed voting system. Only the votes of aristocrats, capitalists, we don't have any, so let's forget about those. Officers, we have very few of. We have 5,000, so 5 battalions, and only like 50 of each battalion are officers. So we have about 250 officers in our nation, so again, irrelevant. It's really the clergy and the aristocrats that vote, right? With aristocrats counting for twice as much as clergymen. So obviously they vote for landowners and Catholic Church. So most of our pops support landowners. Most of the wealthy pops, right? The wealth of those pops is huge, and they again support landowners and Catholic Church. And that's what we saw in our population tab right here, right? So these are the people obviously who support landowners and those interest groups. And also in terms of voting, it is only aristocrats and clergymen votes that count, and they obviously vote for landowners or Catholic Church, or a mix of these two, with a little bit of overflowing maybe into other interest groups, but predominantly this is who they vote for. And thus, only interest groups that even made a party, and pops can only vote for a party, they cannot vote for an interest group. The only interest groups that even made a party are, unsurprisingly, landowners, Catholic Church, and armed forces just kind of joined in for various reasons. I'll talk about parties in more detail later. But this is the ruling party. It's not surprising. It's just driven by landed voting. It's got a huge clout because a lot of pops support it, right? A lot of pops support it. Those pops are very wealthy. They get a lot of bonuses from tenant farmers, slave trade. Catholic Church gets one from state religion, 30%, and religious schools. On top of it all, they have some good leaders. And then on top of it all, they also vote for themselves, right? Apart from supporting their interest group, they are the only people who can vote, and so they get legitimacy, quote unquote, from votes for the Conservative Party. Thus, the Conservative Party holds 100% of the votes, pretty much 100% of the clout, 81.6% of the clout. It does give us a righteous government, giving us another minus 25% enactment time on top of minus 25% from authority. So we're going to pass laws very quickly if we support them, and it gives us more loyalists. So there we are. Now, how everyone else is marginalized. Now, who do we want? Now, we will probably want, if we are to progress to to banning slavery and then to a social democratic progressive society, we will need to bolster intelligentsia over the long run. So let's just go ahead with that since we have that authority. Won't bolster anyone else. Industrialists will take care of themselves, as you will see, and we don't actually want them too powerful. So with that, actually, we're not going to unpause in the first episode. Sorry about that, guys. We're coming up on the hour. But hopefully that gave you a good overview of Cuba, how to think about a country when you start to play, and what kind of objectives to set yourselves and why, how to understand the country. And there we are. You guys, I'll make a cut here. I hope you're enjoying it. If you are, if you joined this episode, please give it a like, as it's the first episode of the series. It really, really helps to get the series out there. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next episode, where I will do a recap of everything we said, and we will definitely unpause pretty much straight away. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. Hope you will enjoy this series. I'm really excited with it. I've done a few pre-plays. It's quite a hard one to pull off, but we'll see what we can do and how far we can get. It will be interesting. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.